Okay, today we've got the Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania again, John Fetterman. Thanks for coming back on.
Oh, thank you for having me back on. It's a pleasure.
This got lost in the cycle because, the whole insurrection at the U.S. Capitol and all. But
Yeah,
in Pennsylvania,
a little thing like that.
yeah, yeah. So in Pennsylvania last week, Republicans had refused to seat a newly elected Democratic state senator. You were removed. Everything devolved into chaos in the chamber. What the hell happened at the first state Senate session?
Sure. Yeah. It's really what I call it picture day, where it's perfunctory. It's families are there, and newly elected or reelected senators are sworn in. And every year every cycle there's 25. So in every other time past, it's again ceremonial. But the majority made the decision that they would not seat a duly elected Democratic state senator, who just coincidentally happens to be my state senator. But their argument is like, well, it was a very close election, and it certainly was close, but it was definitively certified and rendered as official. And then our Supreme Court affirmed it once again. So not only was Senator Brewster elected democratically by his constituents, he was affirmed by our state Supreme Court, which is, of course, overwhelmingly elected by the people of Pennsylvania overall. So that's two wills of democracy that are being thwarted. And they said, we're not seating them, and we're just going to wait. And I said, well, I don't want this. We can't let it go this way. I'm imploring you. And of course, they refused, and I did what I had to do. And I as the president of the Senate and the presiding officer, I refused to entertain their motion. I said, no, everyone gets seated. Everyone who is democratically certified. His credential is no different than anyone else's that we're swearing in. And they invoked a rarely used, if ever, procedural maneuver where they voted me out, quite frankly. And I kept pushing, and we ended up having to get Senator Brewster up for a vote, but of course they refused. So as you mentioned, it devolved into chaos, and it subsequently ended with me needing to leave the Senate chambers. And they said, well, you broke the rules. And I said, yeah, I did break the rules, but you broke the law. You right. broke, like, I'll break rules over breaking the law. And where they ever decided that their will is more important than democracy, both in my district or statewide, just because you don't like it or agree with it. And I want to emphasize, Senator Brewster was more than happy to sign saying if the court appeals go against him, he'll step down and let his challenger step in. So this was just a flex, and an unnecessary one at that. And then what happened. And complicating things, there were over 200, angry Trump protesters under my office balcony protesting the election. The difference between what on Wednesday versus the a peaceful one outcome on Tuesday, who knows what the difference was? It could have easily gone differently that way. In Pennsylvania, we can't forget this idea that democracy means there are results that you like. You don't an outcome simply because it goes against your party's wishes or your own personal preferences.
Yeah, and this seems to be a recurring theme. Shockingly enough, it's not just Pennsylvania that we're seeing that.
Yeah, it's everywhere. And
yeah.
I would have hoped that when a group of militiamen were seriously planning to kidnap, maybe even harm a governor of a sitting state like Michigan, that would have been like, whoa, this cosplay has gone far enough. Like, we got to knock this off. But it didn't. And I'm not the least bit surprised, but I'm profoundly disappointed the way things went on Wednesday. If anything, I feel like we got lucky that it could have been much worse. All it would have taken would have been one or two random individuals with an assault rifle or, a gas can and a lighter. I mean, who knows?
And by the way, there lost in all the melee of what had happened. There were bombs that were sent to the DNC, to the RNC, that were found at the Capitol. I mean, like, unto itself would be one of the biggest news events, of the year, and yet it was just one more thing that happened amid all the pandemonium caused by Trump, and then straight down the line to the rest of the Republican Party.
And it took the president getting booted off of Twitter, this, I like, these are like, I think 2021 thinks it's still 2020, with this stuff happening, we really need to turn the page, no matter how hard the hangover of 2020 seems to be. And, I certainly don't take any day between now and Joe Biden's inauguration for granted, especially after what happened on Wednesday. But this notion that it is not free speech to lie. You can't scream fire in a crowded movie theater when there isn't one. Saying that the election was rigged or it was stolen is demonstrably false. It's not true. It never was true. And we saw what happens when you have 2 months solid of misinformation and lies and propaganda, that all it takes is that one spark and the tinderbox goes off. And what could have happened to our leaders and to the Capitol itself would have been something that never even occurred during the Civil War, for Pete's sakes.
Okay, so in Pennsylvania, what are Republicans waiting for? How does this last state senator get seated at least?
I really don't know. There's a court case that's outstanding, but I'm not even sure that even if that court judgment affirms Senator Brewster as the winner, who knows? I mean, all bets are off. What's so ironic is that one of the senators that voted to have me removed from the chambers because I wasn't following the rules took in storming the Capitol, Doug Mastriano. There was a picture of him on Facebook with a former state rep, Rick Saccone, and they were like, "Hey, together." And then the next picture Rick Saccone posted was, "We're storming the Capitol." I mean, his exact phrase. I mean, and it's like, rules for thee, but not for me. I can subvert democracy wholesale and invade the Capitol. I mean, and that's the kind of weird juxtaposition that we're in, where some silly, stuffy protocol is somehow more important than this idea that hasn't been censored or anything from the Senate. Like, they booted me for demanding that they seat a democratically elected state senator. Meanwhile, he's down in Washington D.C. It's astounding to me personally.
Yeah, I mean, well, you should know better than to let a Democrat who won an election try to take his seat.
Yeah, I mean, how the insanity, right?
Yeah.
But no, it's true. But I mean, you can see the picture of him online. It's just this idea that was a bridge too far for me demanding a democratically elected seat be seated with the same credential he had. He was sworn in that day too. Yeah. So they had the identical credentials. No, he can't be seated, and you got to go. Meanwhile, I'm catching a bus down to Washington, D.C. to storm the Capitol the next day.
Yeah. Is Pennsylvania, as it stands, the House and Senate districts, are they gerrymandered?
Our congressional are not. Our congressional are true.
Okay.
And they're fair. And just so your viewers understand, before the redistricting in 2018, we went from 13 Republican Democrats to 9 and 9. 9 and 9, right down the middle. And that's a true reflection. Pennsylvania is a very purple state. I've been saying that forever. There was a time where it was like, Pennsylvania is blue. I'm like, no, it's not. And what's so crazy now is that after it went 9 and 9, the Republicans were complaining. They're like, like they don't want fairness. They want them all. They'd be happy if they could rig it. So it was 18 Republicans. So
right.
Our House and Senate is still gerrymandered, and with the new census and our Supreme Court that won't put up with that, and the governor, I'm optimistic we will get a better redistricting and redrawing of those maps. I've never wanted anything other than a fair democratic will. I'm fine with 9 and 9. Would I love 18 Dems and 0 Republicans? No, because that's not fair. That's not true. Yeah. That's not the will of Pennsylvania. If you have a problem with 9 Dems and 9 Republicans, it's because you don't believe in true redistricting and democracy.
Right. And I do want to mention, there is a panel for redistricting that will draw the House and Senate maps, and that panel split 2 Dems, 2 Republicans, and the 5th member is appointed by the state Supreme Court, where Democrats have a majority. So that does bode well for this year's redistricting process.
You know what it bodes well for? It bodes well for fairness.
Yeah.
Fairness, just basic fairness. Just what they did with our congressional districts. There wasn't any revenge. We didn't say, well, you know what, you gerrymandered us. Well, we'll see what you like, and we'll do 13 and 5 in reverse. It's like, no, we did it fair and common sense the way it should be. And look what we got, 9 and 9, and that's the democratic will of Pennsylvania. And we have swing districts. We have PA 17 out here, although we might be losing that. And then we have Fitzpatrick's district out in Bucks County. And what's crazy is that the Republicans argued that we rigged Pennsylvania for Joe Biden, but we let Fitzpatrick win by 13 points. Like Joe Biden won his district, but Fitzpatrick, a Republican, won by 13 points. It defies logic. Their argument that it was rigged, but it's the democratic will, and that's all I've ever wanted.
So let's talk about you. Your state's Republican senator is retiring in 2022. Are we going to see Are we going to see a John Fetterman for U.S. Senate next cycle?
Well, as some of you may know, I did announce that we're taking a look at it, and I can tell you, and I mean this in the most sincere way, like the response was truly humbling and overwhelming. It's not what I expected. And it really was. All I did was tweet an article that I'm kicking a few tires and looking at this, and then it went from there. So definitely continuing with that process. Profoundly grateful and honored to everyone that's donated and extended the kind word. And there'll be others in this race, no doubt. I know there's others looking at it. The great thing about Pennsylvania is we have an amazing bench, and any one of them Pennsylvania would be well served one way or the other. But yeah, I am just overwhelmed with gratitude at the response that we got, just with announcing that we're exploring.
What lessons would you take if you were to launch your run, or for anybody who ultimately runs for the Senate as a Democrat in Pennsylvania? What lessons can you take from Georgia in order to mount a successful run?
Sure. Well, what I would take is I mean, I've had the good fortune of being elected statewide, so I think I have a pretty good idea of what running statewide is. In Pennsylvania is a very large and diverse state. We have one county with 5,000 people in it. We have Philadelphia, one of the largest cities in America. And it's a very diverse, and your worldview can be radically different and still call yourself a Pennsylvania citizen based on where you happen to live in the Commonwealth. And we can't ever forget that. And we can't ever forget that rural counties and urban areas have different needs and different challenges, but there's also some overlapping ones too. And I am not a partisan where and when I don't have to. My partisanship is out of necessity. It's not discretionary. I don't like to look at it as professional wrestling. I don't like flexes that would attempt to humiliate or to demean the other party. But there are things that we can't tolerate in Pennsylvania, and that is smearing our elections. And that's just not true. I put it out there as long as we had this awful cycle. We had 3 cases out of 7 million votes. If you got more proof, let's see it, dude. Let's see it. And not one single person took me up on that challenge. You want to know why? Because they couldn't. They couldn't.
I can't even remember how many millions of dollars Texas is. Was it Ken Paxton? Texas is.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for mentioning that. My dude still owes Pennsylvania $3 million, and we're probably never going to get that. But I mean, talk about going down in a hot, swirling, flaming pile of garbage. That whole notion, and then the tragic taking of the loss of 5 lives. Like actions have consequences. You scream fraud, you scream lies, you scream all that. It's going to end somewhere. And as I said earlier in our time together, if a legitimate plot to kidnap and possibly assassinate the governor of Michigan wasn't enough to get you saying, well, pump the brakes on some of this. It's not professional wrestling anymore. It's not, for ratings. It's dangerous, and we know that now more than ever. And I will push back against that in every opportunity I can, whether it's in my state Senate or whether if I'd be lucky enough to ever represent us in the U.S. Senate. But things are different. I think we're going to look at our political atmosphere or landscape pre and post that uprising on Wednesday. And we realize now that there's precious left that's not on the table anymore, and we got to pull it back. I'm not suggesting a big kumbaya movement. I know things are raw, but we need to agree that this is unacceptable. It can never happen again. And democracy will benefit your party sometimes, or it benefits my party sometimes. It benefits all of us all the time. And we can never forget that. And one party has lost their way in that regard, and we must insist that we return back to that.
So obviously something we learned from Georgia and Wisconsin is that it takes a strong ground game that starts early. And you don't win statewide by basically starting in June for a November election. So this isn't also something that candidates can do themselves. Like if you're to run, you're busy running a race. So who is Pennsylvania's Stacey Abrams, or does Pennsylvania even have one yet?
Well, I mean, Stacey Abrams is a unique and singular individual for sure. I mean, her work has changed the country, quite frankly. So, I mean, I wouldn't suggest that we have anyone of that, but we do have a very strong Democratic Party or organization in our state. By witness the fact that we were able to win Pennsylvania by 80,000, a margin that is well beyond, say, Georgia or Arizona. Yeah. That being said, my focus has always been and will continue to be engaging those smaller rural states. Because if they become inflamed or they feel like they were ignored, you have Donald Trump. And the only reason Donald Trump ever won Pennsylvania in 2016 and the presidency was because he pulled 80 plus margins out of these counties. These places are important for a moral perspective and an infrastructural perspective, but politically too. You ignore them at your peril. Yeah. And that kind of organizing was something that I infused into the Biden campaign in Pennsylvania. My first campaign manager managed Pennsylvania for Joe Biden. And, I made sure everyone understood, in my view, and it turned out to be correct, you got to send Joe to Erie. You got to send Joe to Johnstown. You got to send Joe to Bucks County. It is not a Philly-Pittsburgh game in Pennsylvania. Never was, never can be. And moving forward, it's absolutely a 67 county game.
So how could we help?
What I would, hope, one, thank you for having me on and giving me a chance to spend time with your viewers. Is I would just want the viewers of your program to understand that Pennsylvania is a deeply divided state. It's purple, and it may not make sense where you're coming from, wherever you are in this country. But let me assure you, there are intensely progressive pockets in Pittsburgh and in Philadelphia, but there's also intensely. I think one county in Pennsylvania voted 84% to 16% for Donald Trump. Yeah. I mean, those are remarkable margins. And I would just want everybody to understand in Pennsylvania that, pay attention to Pennsylvania, support our efforts in Pennsylvania, because this race would be pivotal in maintaining and expanding control of the Senate. And just understanding that the dynamic might be something that is different in your state, different in your district, but I can assure you, Pennsylvania is very purple, and that's not going to change certainly by the 22 cycle. And this race is going to, I think, be one of the most critical in the 22 cycle out of all of them.
John, thanks so much for taking the time, and best of luck. You got a whole lot of people supporting you, so looking forward to seeing what happens in this next cycle.
I'm so grateful. Thank you for having me on again, and thank everyone out there that just really blew us away with the response, from yesterday. So thank you again.